So the big news that came across the wire just within the last hour is that apparently the President of the United States now has said, forget the 2% of GDP that everyone should be contributing to defense. It should be 4%. Were you aware of this, and do you support that number?
I was not aware of this. I don't think any of us were. We certainly believe that our NATO allies should do a better job in contributing to the cost of our mutual defense. The 2% goal is one that has a glide path to accomplish, and that we should accomplish first. So before we start changing or moving the goalposts, let's get the 2% met. That's in our national interest and in the mutual security of the NATO partners.
How do we come up with these numbers, Senator? I mean, how do we calculate what it is required really for our joint defense and come up with the 2% or the 4%? I note that, as I understand it, the U.S. government right now spends about 3.5%. So it doesn't even make the 4% right now.
Well, that's a very good question. First, it's how much do we need for our mutual defense, and that number is done separately as to what a country can realistically increase their defense commitment. It can't happen overnight. Their economy can't handle it. Their budget problems, their political problems. So we need a glide path that gets us to the proper contribution of each country that meets our mutual defense needs. NATO is strong as far as its budget support is concerned. The allocation needs to be fair, and we all agree with that, and that's why the 2% goal was established.
So you say, sir, that NATO is strong. Is it going to come out of this summit stronger than it went in? And is President Trump making it stronger, particularly as we look forward to his meeting with Vladimir Putin come Monday?
I can tell you that those of us in Congress, we are strongly for a strong NATO. We're going to pass a resolution in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee underscoring that. We had a vote on the floor of the Senate last night. We are committed to a strong NATO. It's in our national security interest to do that. So we believe that the current structure is sound, and the United States needs to be a leader to promote that structure.
But given the testy rhetoric by both sides, what are the chances that this NATO summit will end up like the G7?
Well, we hope that doesn't happen. Clearly, President Trump has a style that I find objectionable. I don't think it's helpful the way that he goes into these meetings. His comments concerning Germany and energy are important comments. NATO, Europe needs to be more energy independent. They need to have alternative energy sources. So the pipeline with Germany and Russia is of concern to all of us moving forward. But the way the president handled it by just jumping in and causing a problem before you even had the full meeting of the NATO principles was not helpful. So the president has a way of making points. I disagree with that. Each country should contribute at least 2%. He's right on that. Europe should have alternative energy sources from Russia. That's also true.
President Trump sees a good meeting as a positive diplomatic achievement. Such was the case with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. What's the risk of that happening again with Vladimir Putin?
Well, what happens is the president seems to have rough meetings with our closest allies and then embraces those who are basically our enemies. So Russia attacked us, and it continues to do activities that try to undermine our democratic institutions. I hope that this meeting that takes place in Helsinki, President Trump will be very clear and very open about our concerns with Russia.
So, Senator, President Trump right now is busy not only with various summits in Europe, but also on the trade front. We had the announcement last night about potentially tariffs on another $200 billion imported from China. Senator Hatch, I must note, a Republican senator, came out right away, said he thought it was reckless, was not going to lead to productive negotiations with China. Do you share Senator Hatch's view?
I do, and I would tell you we're going to have a vote on the floor of the Senate in a few minutes on the Corker Amendment that would give congressional oversight to the president's use of the national security, the 232 tariffs. We all agree with the president that China does things that need to be addressed. Their stealing of intellectual property, their manipulation of currency. We have a right to go against China for their trade infractions. But there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And the way the president has done it, he has not engaged our partners who would help us in this matter. He's insulted our partners by imposing tariffs against them on aluminum and steel. This is not the way that the United States stands up for fair trade globally. So I disagree with the strategy the president is using. There's a lot of companies that are going to get hurt in the process. It's going to hurt our economy. There's a right way, there's a wrong way, and the president's moving in the wrong direction.
Senator, you mentioned Section 232, which is the iron and steel, of course. That's the invocation for that. But actually, the tariffs they're talking about now with respect to China are under Section 301. Would you favor amending Section 301 to curtail presidential powers?
Well, we're going to have a vote on 232 today, so let's get that done. I'm for strong enforcement of our trade rules. I disagree with the way the president is using those powers. Congress has a clear responsibility of oversight. So, yes, I do believe that we should exercise our oversight responsibilities, particularly with this president.
And while all of this is happening, Judge Kavanaugh, the nominee for the Supreme Court, continues to make his rounds in Congress. Polls right now put you at a comfortable place for November, but there are Democratic senators facing re-elections in places that Mr. Trump carried by double digits. Are you concerned that some may defect?
Well, this is not about the November elections. This is about the next generation and decisions made by the Supreme Court of the United States that's going to affect your rights. It's going to affect whether the Supreme Court will be that independent body that will protect your constitutional rights against the abuse of power by the President of the United States or by Congress or by corporate America. This nominee could very well give Donald Trump a rubber stamp on his excessive powers. So this is an extremely important vote for our future, and each senator needs to evaluate what Justice Kavanaugh would mean for women's health care rights, for protecting the affordable care on pre-existing conditions and practices by insurance companies, abusive practices, your commercial rights, your environmental rights, all that's at risk, and that is what I think each senator needs to evaluate.